Welcome back to Aquilo, and thank you for listening. If you've made it to Season 9, then you're the reason we're still here to tell the story, and for that, you have our undying gratitude. But it also means that you're the reason we managed to get a book published. A Dash of Demon, the first Aquilo book, will be in stores on June 16th. If you haven't pre-ordered it yet, please consider doing so. We've worked really hard on getting it made and are very proud of the results. Also, if enough listeners allowed us to make a book, imagine what doors selling enough books might open. A Dash of Demon can be ordered from your favorite bookstore, online, or in person. We know you'll love it. Aquilo. Season 9, Chapter 1, Get Bent, Hesiod. The story of Pandora's Box is an allegorical tale that needs no introduction. Less known for its actual narrative, it's widely understood for its implication. Opening Pandora's box is to set loose some sort of evil or mischief that is impossible to contain again. A modern equivalent would be to say that one cannot unring a bell or put toothpaste back in the tube. It's a worst-case scenario of what is done is done. But we forget the essence of the story itself. Too often do we neglect that it was Pandora's curiosity, her quest for forbidden knowledge, that led her to open the box. We failed to mention that the box was a gift from Zeus to Pandora before she was sent to Earth as the first woman, in turn gifted to the Titan Epimetheus, all part of a vengeful plot to punish humanity after Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to them. Pandora is described as a beautiful evil, and having received gifts from all the gods of Olympus. Of course, most of them were poisoned, making her a vessel for malicious stereotypes we endure to this day. Hermes, in particular, gave her the ability to speak, but also a propensity for lie. Mythological misogyny aside, there's another detail that has changed or been forgotten about Pandora's box through the ages. Specifically, that it was not originally a box, but rather a jar. And while I take offense to many of the insulting details of the story, I have a certain attachment to that last part. For I, too, have a jar. In fact, I have many of them, and a good quantity should also only be opened with the utmost care and foresight. One such jar is the one in which I keep the vanilla sugar. It's nothing special, really. A few vanilla beans are kept inside a jar with granulated sugar. The sugar absorbs vanilla flavor over time, which gives it a potent and delicious aroma. It's the secret ingredient to Doris's biscotti. To a sensitive palate, it's far more refined option than vanilla extract or even crushed vanilla beans, managing to walk the line between too subtle and too overwhelming. A side effect of keeping sugar and vanilla beans together in an airtight container, however, is that it concentrates the fragrance of vanilla so much that it's almost overpowering. I've learned over the years to keep my jar of vanilla sugar closed during opening hours, lest I attract the attention of my patrons and a string of questions about what I'm going to make with such a delicious ingredient. Sometimes, however, circumstances do not allow for caution and necessity demands. On this cold, early December morning, I found myself with no other choice than to open Pandora's box.
Biscotti?
Annabelle had only just walked in. She was pulling off her scarf and mittens, getting ready to settle in for the morning. The weather had yet to be cold or bitter enough to justify her attire, but she'd acquired brightly colored gear and seemed eager to show it off.
It's not always biscotti,
I explained, quick to take a few grams of sugar required and close the jar. But the damage is done.
I'm making some apple cakes. Olivia left me with a ton of apples, and if I don't do something with them, they'll go bad.
A grin plastered on her face, accentuated with rosy cheeks, Annabelle sets her laptop down and pulls out her books. This has been her new ritual before work. She comes into the Aquilo Cafe midway through my shift and studies for some online courses before heading into work in the afternoon.
Apple cakes?
She asks, handing me her laptop wire to plug in for her behind the counter.
Seems pretty run-of-the-mill for fancy sugar.
She's not the only one who notices the smell. Half of the customers in the dining room are stealing looks in my direction, spying to see if they could guess what the cook is up to. The attention gives me a shudder, a reaction I've only recently developed. Too much attention from too many people makes me wary these days. Like mice slowly chewing through grain, I could feel my confidence being nibbled away week after week. The comfort I had built living in Aquilo for the past 3 years slowly crumbling.
They're fancy apple cakes,
I say, pouring the sugar into a bowl.
Antoinette caramelized apple cakes. Ooh la la, that does sound fancy. And tasty,
I assure, struggling to muster up a smile.
Wait and see.
I watch her, smiling ear to ear as she flips open textbooks and boots up her computer. To watch Annabelle, she seems not to have a care in the world. Her routine is set and her ambitions are stronger than ever. It seems unnatural under the circumstances. I should be happy, joyful, right along with my friend, but seeing her so carefree only adds weight to my own aftertaste of worry. I keep preparing my dough, taking ingredients from the kitchen and bringing them to the front with every step. Not the most efficient process, but things have changed over the last few months. I don't feel as comfortable in the kitchen anymore, and I'm uneasy leaving the front of the cafe unattended.
Biscotti?
Olivia must have walked in as I was fetching my ground almonds and flour. She stands in front of the register, smelling the air for that lingering aroma of vanilla sugar.
No,
I say, nudging my bowl of dough-to-be in her direction.
Antoinette apple cakes. Well,
Olivia says with a proud grin.
Those sound delightful.
She's wearing an oversized plaid flannel jacket, obviously stolen or borrowed from her husband, and some denim overalls stained with paint, dirt, and even a few flecks of oil. Clearly, it is not a day for meeting clients at Fig's Orchard.
I won't make any promises, but I can vouch that the apples are of the highest quality and freshly sourced. You flatterer,
she says, batting her eyelids in a mock attempt at bashfulness.
I'm positive the cakes will sell out in no time.
Olivia makes her way to the counter to sit next to Annabelle, moving some of her books out of the way. Her fingers look naked without her rings, and it's a little weird to see her nail polish chipped and damaged. She's not even wearing earrings, which seems as bizarre as the Aquilo no longer serving coffee. A sacrilege, some would say.
Still cleaning out the barn?
I ask, putting my batter aside to pour Olivia a cup of coffee and get her one of those biscotti I keep hearing about. After Olivia's health scare earlier in the year, the Figs had decided to throw caution to the wind and invest in their business one last time before retirement. Business was good and revenue stable enough despite the economy, expanding their operation by updating the fermentation tanks and bottling equipment. That meant clearing out and upgrading the barn, which was no small task.
We hired some local kids to help,
she explains, grabbing the mug I offer her with thirsty hands.
But only for the weekend when we'll have all the heavy stuff to move out. The Giraud offered to lend us their tractor in exchange for a case of cider. If all goes well, we should be done by next Monday.
The Giraud, Mark and Stephanie. I picture them in my mind, wondering if they were part of the cult that brought back Philomène Dufour. Were they at the Black Manor? It's a question I keep asking whenever I see anyone from the village or hear their name. Apart from a few close friends and my brother, suspicion has become my only trusted ally.
I can get Eric to help you,
I offer, volunteering my brother without his knowledge or approval.
I doubt he's got anything better to do, and he's strong, if nothing else. I wouldn't say no to that,
Olivia says, accepting before we even consult with Eric.
Maybe I can even get Gulliver to come by.
Her thought is interrupted. The door chimes sing their song, and the door swings open, but instead of quickly closing behind the customer coming in, it remains open. At first, my customers and I are annoyed at the gust of cold air invading the comfort and warmth of the Aquilo. People come here to find respite from the creeping winter and a cup of coffee and some delicious pastries. The moment we understand the situation, however, we all forget every ounce of irritation.
Let me hold that for you,
Annabelle says, loud enough to be heard over the street noises, all while leaping into action. Anais Comtois is pushing the inside door with her back while trying to pull something through the outside door. It's a difficult task on its own, but with the step at the entrance of the cafe, it makes it even more complicated. Fortunately, Annabelle is there to help hold both doors open so Anais can get inside with her cumbersome accompaniment. It's a wheelchair. Anais is doing her best to bring her daughter in for some orange juice and a chocolatine. We're used to strollers and the occasional shopping trolley, but wheelchairs are a different challenge. The year has not been kind to little Nisha. She wasn't exactly a plump kid the first time I met her, but now she looks downright skeletal. At first glance, I feel like she should be in bed somewhere, comfortable and safe. But is that what I would want in her situation? Of course not. I'd be trying to savor every inch of the world while I still had the chance. In fact, it feels like a privilege that she chooses to have her mother bring her here, of all places. I let mother and child settle at the table while I press some oranges for juice. I have the bottled stuff, but this is what I served Nisha the first time she stopped by, and each time ever since. There's a power in ritual, I remind myself.
No tea party today?
I ask, putting the glass of juice and a chocolatine on the table in front of Nisha. I've got coffee on the counter for Anais too, but priorities.
Nope,
answers the child, adjusting her position in the chair.
but if I can have a spare cookie for Citron, that would be nice. Are you making biscotti?
She brandishes her stuffed crochet canary to remind me who she's talking about.
That's a lot of sweets, honey,
Anais tells her daughter, her voice cracking under the pressure of exhaustion. Nisha doesn't talk back, mimicking her mother instead, mouthing the admonishment to her plush bird. I could count the bones in each of her hands and trace all of her veins through her skin. It's a wonder the child can be so animated with such low muscle mass. She's given up on wearing her wig, preferring a thick lavender wool toque with a massive pom-pom.
I'll put the cookie in a bag,
I say,
just in case.
The rest of my shift goes by without further incident. Not that I need anything more on my plate at this time. I stick around for an hour after Stefan takes over, mostly to finish the apple cakes and prepare a tapenade and some homemade garlic hummus. Stefan had to spend some time at the hospital and took a month-long leave before coming back. The head injury he got last fall wasn't life-threatening in and of itself, but there was risk of brain hemorrhage. When he came back, he explained a new inventory tracking system he'd devised during his convalescence. A complex, efficient, and even elegant spreadsheet that is a massive overkill for the amount of stock and ingredients we keep. Of course, I adopted it. I helped Anais with Nisha's wheelchair on their way out. I'll have to look at getting a ramp installed, maybe even an automatic door opening mechanism. Seems like something I should have done already. With Annabelle, Nisha, and Olivia gone, and with Stefan in charge of things, I make my way up to my apartment. It used to be my habit to stick around at the Aquilo after my shift. I'd mingle with the customers, my fellow townsfolk, giving away samples of food I'm trying out or catching up with friends who'd linger at the cafe. Maybe I'd go out to the market or just for a walk, going so far as to perhaps get something at the Lady Godiva or at the little Italian restaurant in front of the park. It used to be that I lived in Aquilo. Now, I mostly just climb up to the apartment to think. I think about Annabelle, who's chosen an unhealthy and unnatural way to cope with her grief. I think about Ophelia and Gulliver. Now that the former is no longer an enemy, I don't know what to make of her relationship with the latter. I think about Patience and Charity, struggling to make sense of their nature. I think about Nisha and the leukemia devouring her from the inside, resisting every treatment she's subjected to. Mostly, I think about Philomene Dufour, how she came back from the dead and what it cost to achieve. The cult that assembled for the purpose of summoning my ancestor, built from the remains of cloud worshippers and other random individuals from the community. There's a pile of frames near the entrance to my apartment. They're stacked carefully from largest at the bottom to smallest on top. I've leaned them against the wall in a corner to avoid them toppling over. Each was removed from the wall of the corridor that goes down the length of the apartment, leaving the surface clear and empty for a fresh purpose. I pulled out the hooks, patched the holes, and even repainted the whole surface myself. I'm not that good with color, but Eric helped me match the original. Probably the most use of his aborted architecture schooling he'll get for a while. Now the wall has become something else altogether. My shame, my work, my purpose, and my obsession all rolled up into one. It's a sprawling map of Aquilo, as expressed not through its geography, but rather its residents. Dozens upon dozens of photos of every citizen of Aquilo I could sneak, each accompanied by an index card detailing whatever I could remember about them. Friends like Helen Edna, Annabelle, Julia sit next to more ambiguous acquaintances like Michael, Dr. Pavlov, Pat. Then there are those whom I've opted to put into the camp of enemies. Philemon, Francisco, and the demon Pride. I've got a spot for the animals of Aquilo, if you'll believe it. The raccoons, Pickering's dogs. I've even got a sticky note with the words Ghost Moose scribbled on it, just in case. There's a section reserved for outsiders, like Gulliver, Chef Gagnon, Bertrand, and my sweet Agnes. Then I've put up a column of special index cards at the end of the corridor, near the corner to the dining room. You know it's special because the cards are colored. Those have a variety of locations and phenomenon written on them. The Donselites, the now closed Hellgate, Philemon's Return. Each features a custom rating to represent their threat level. Since I've started this project, I've not allowed a single person in my apartment. I know what most of them would say. Accusations of insanity and obsession would dominate the conversation. Well, what I need is more information and help connecting all of these dots together. I'm like a chef with a plethora of ingredients, and I have to guess exactly what menu to serve. An untold number of courses, each with its own requirements and preparations, and somehow I need to classify, measure out, prepare, and serve all of it without room for error. And that's where I stumble. You see, I could probably pull off as close to a successful 7-course meal out of that particular scenario, but when it comes to unraveling a conspiracy, I'm in the wrong kitchen. Sure, I've got my fancy wall of delusional paranoia. It's no exaggeration to say that I'm proud of what I've done so far. Taking subtle photos of as many of the local inhabitants was a particular thrill. But now that I've got it all laid out in a graphic format, each piece ready to be rearranged with thumbtacks should I need to move anything, I feel at a loss what to do next. I even bought yarn from Ophelia so I can draw color-coded connections between people, events, and places. The wall has been ready to go for 3 days now, and for 3 afternoons, all I've been able to do is stare at it. Last night, I tried connecting Philemon to relatives, including myself, members of Phyllis Baker's cult, but that was a dead end, and I tore the whole thing down. Speaking of Phyllis Baker, I've no photo of her. None of my timid research yielded any more information about the woman, and no one could give me anything else to add about her origin. She's nothing but a lonely index card with a name and a massive question mark. I considered asking Helen to help. She's got one of the sharpest minds in Aquilo and is accustomed to spinning a lot of plates that'll eventually fall into a neat pile. She knows everyone in town and has some familiarity with the village history. However, she's also the last person who'll tolerate my nonsense, and she's more likely to convince me to abandon my research. I bet she'd tell me to give all of this over to Aaron Wilson, or maybe even Detective Lamore. Not that I haven't considered recruiting either of these two. Lamore, in particular, seems likely a potent ally in this crusade, but his quest is for truth while mine is for answers. While those might appear the same, their similarities stop at the crust. One is a chicken pot pie while the other is blueberry. We'd be on the same track for a while, but soon our purposes would come into conflict, for better or worse. Wilson is another interesting candidate, but apart from whatever I tell him finding its way into Helen's ear, he'd be insufferable to collaborate with. Whatever I'd gain in insight, I'd lose in theatrics. Oh, I can imagine him right now, sitting backwards on a dining room chair, staring at the wall while chewing on a toothpick for hours. He'd open his mouth only to ask me questions, attempting to guide me to the answer instead of putting the pieces together himself. The cost in whiskey alone would bankrupt me. This leaves only one option. There is a man for whom this wall would feel like home. An acquaintance, no, a friend, who lives for this sort of investigation and would bring with him a unique set of skills and particular insight that few possess. He's a resourceful, independent thinker and a believer. So it's come to this, I murmur at my phone, scrolling with my thumb through my contacts. It's not long before I find his name. I don't use my phone to call people very often. The very thought of it sends a shiver down my spine. Some people are more old-fashioned than others, though. I let the line ring on the other side. It's irritating that he doesn't immediately pick up. By the second ring, I start to doubt myself and consider hanging up. I let it get to 3 rings, because by now his caller ID will be able to tell him I called anyway. After the 3rd ring, I ready myself to leave a voicemail.
Miriam?
An energetic and overeager voice answers. It's like the phone was answered by a bear with a slightly nasally voice. It's a wonder he gets to make a living just by speaking.
Thomas, hi. Hey, I was wondering, do you have time to help me with a little bit of an investigation?
The night is as all nights have been in the last several weeks. A restless mix of nightmares and worries. I make myself a concoction of chamomile and honey to soothe, avoid looking at screens an hour before bed, and I try to stick to a regular sleep schedule, but nothing will do. As soon as I close my eyes, I see it again. The return of Philomène Dufour. Not so much in all of its horrific details, but rather as a presence. The dreams are varied and surreal, but always buttered with the same theme and substance. Philomène walking into the Aquilo Cafe to order a drink and pastry, but everyone in her wake keels over dead. Or I'm in the cafe's kitchen, working on a recipe, and Philomène is there, over my shoulder, pointing out everything I'm doing wrong, much like Chef Gagnon used to do. In a way, she's everywhere but nowhere at once, invading my dreams but without manifesting in the waking world yet. A trigger has been pulled, the gunshot still rings in my ears, but I'm waiting to see what the bullet has done. I almost welcome the morning light as it heralds my upcoming shift. While I no longer find the same joy and safety in work as I used to, it remains a distraction. My favorite moments are the hour before I unlock the front door to let the customers in. Without any of my regulars, I can almost forget the fall's events and focus only on my one true passion. I put croissants in the oven, scramble eggs for breakfast sandwiches, brew the first pot of coffee. I even welcome the coffee machine's unpredictable hostility. Anything to feel like things are somewhat back to the way they were. I lock the apartment door and take a moment to look at Rue Principale from the vantage of my front balcony. There's a bite to the air, brisk and dry. My breath is clearly visible, and I blow a cloud of condensation into the sky, watching it dissipate, and remembering when there had always been a cloud above the village. There's a bit of activity on the street. Nothing I would have noticed over the summer, but I'm a little more attentive to what people are doing these days. I see Cedric and Anya's truck parked about a block down. We don't see these two very often. Their activity is more often reserved to evenings and the fringes of daily life. Yet they're to credit for a lot of Aquilo's upkeep on the Canadian side. They pick up roadkill, do landscaping of public areas, water flowers in Aquilo Border Park. Once in a while, Cedric will drop in and order for both of them. He's a tall, lanky guy in his mid-20s with a sincere smile and a jewelry store's bounty of hardware on his face and ears. Anya's a more taciturn woman, of an age with Olivia. She's short, but with the proportions of a bear. I once saw her move a concrete divider several feet just by dragging it on the asphalt. This morning, however, there's a third person on Anya's crew. Tall, elegant, and wearing a taupe wool coat and matching beret, she's supervising the work being done. Helen Edna, Notary Public. It's not that unusual to see her out at this hour. My first thought is that maybe she stopped to chat with Cedric or Anya. Not a social stop, of course, but perhaps something about one of them retaining her services. When I reach the last step and put my boot on the sidewalk, I look up to see what it is exactly they're doing. Apparently, they're hanging something on the lamppost. They've been hanging them on all the lampposts, actually. All of Rue Principale is decorated with fresh new placards, all identical. And these are not holiday decorations. What fresh hell is this? I murmur as I walk past the door to the cafe to investigate further. Helen Edna is looking at me as I walk towards her, bewildered. In fact, there's about a dozen Helen Ednas, all looking into the distance ahead of me. Each is reduced to a disembodied face, struggling to hold as close to a smile as Helen is capable of. Behind her is a desaturated green gradient, allowing her beige blouse and blonde hair to stand out.
Are you serious?
I ask, once I'm close enough to be heard.
Good morning, Miriam.
Upon closer inspection, I notice a tightness to Helen's already habitual tight lips. I'm not sure how to read that expression on her, but it's not her natural, detached demeanor.
Is this for real?
I'm pointing at a freshly installed placard, the one Anya and Cedric are still securing to the lamppost. Helen Edna bites her top lip and frowns, and I can read the regret on her usually illegible expression.
I am afraid so,
she says, almost a confession.
I was hoping it wouldn't come to this, but the hole left by Veronique's passing has become difficult to ignore. Miss Templeton's been pressuring her colleagues at City Hall to find a replacement, but no one seems to want the job. Marie Belle's been acting as provisional mayor behind the scenes, but that can only last so long before it sparks some sort of outrage.
I'm trying to imagine Helen Edna, mayor-elect, and it's a difficult picture to paint. On one hand, I can easily see her behind the desk, going over the town's budget and bylaws. She's got the qualifications for that part of the job, and I believe there's a part of her that would absolutely delight in the complex and demanding paperwork involved. But then there's the flip side. The very idea of Helen campaigning seems absurd to me. Going door to door, giving rousing speeches, and spouting slogans are just not congruent with her character. Sure, she'll obliterate anyone running against her in a debate. Outside of fighting with facts and figures, she'll be relatively outmatched in a battle of charisma. It's like forcing a cat to dance. Then there's whatever occult responsibilities remain in the hands of the mayors of Aquilo.
What about your practice?
I ask, genuinely worried. Helen's business has come to my aid countless times, if not in her official capacity, at least in navigating the bureaucracy of enterprise. She shrugs, as if the question was but an afterthought, or something she would figure out later.
I'll probably have to shutter the practice, at least for a while until my term is over, assuming I win. Which you don't seem that interested in doing anyways.
Anya cuts in, leaning on the ladder where her colleague is working. She picks at the straps of her overalls while grinning at Helen like a teasing child.
If you ask me,
Cedric adds from atop his perch,
I think Miss Edna would make a fantastic mayor. But no one asked you, Sid,
Anya counters. Helen sighs, looking up at her own face. I can see it. The weight of obligation is driving her instead of the push of ambition. Helen Edna, notary public, is a native of Aquilo. She's gone through all the rituals, from the Donselites to the Wilds. She was friends with the local witch and has been working in this community her whole life. In her own way, this setback to her vocation is a labor of love for her home.
The job won't do itself, Anya,
she answers after a moment.
Oh, for sure,
Anya says.
But is it a job for you? I mean, it's not just paperwork and opening the Apple Festival, you know. There's other things.
To that, Anya's voice lowers and she leans forward, her smile broadening into a threatening grin. For a second, she looks a little like the traditional depiction of a witch, full of tricks and mischief. Other things. Not a specific mention of the Hellgate or demons. I shouldn't be surprised that the people who change the bulbs on the lampposts and empty the garbage cans of Aquilo would know of other things. but it's a little strange to hear anyone bring it up in the open, especially to Helen Edna.
It's all right,
Cedric offers, climbing down the ladder while fiddling to put away a handful of zip ties.
Whatever it is, we'll be there to help. We always are, even if it's the other guy.
Anya helps him get off the ladder safely before collapsing it and swinging it adroitly over her shoulder. I know it's made of aluminum and is meant to be light, but the way she manipulates the thing, it might as well be a baton in a parade. Cedric grabs another poster from their truck, and the two of them start walking to the next lamppost, leaving Helen and me behind to look at their handiwork. "Order?" I ask, reading off the one-word slogan under her printed face.
"You came up with that?" "It's what I have to offer,"
she says, still gazing upwards.
"I thought you, of anyone here, would appreciate a stern stance against the chaos we've all been tolerating."
The chaos. I suspect the subtext to mean all things supernatural. Helen's always been so accepting of the weird and wonderful that permeates Aquilo. It's hard not to wonder what might have changed, but also obvious enough to guess.
"Is anyone running against you?"
I ask, as we both turn to follow Anya and Cedric and perhaps go to the cafe to warm up.
"Only one so far,"
she says.
"If I must be honest, I probably wouldn't be running myself if it wasn't for that particular opponent."
"Someone incompetent or dangerous?"
"You're getting better at asking questions,"
she offers, a rare compliment.
"Dangerous, or at the very least potentially so, which would be fine if this were Hemmingford or Saint-Jean, but in Aquilo?"
Potentially dangerous. Curiosity gnaws at me, and although I have to get to the Aquilo Cafe and get ready for my shift, I just have to know.
"All right, out with it then. I know you won't see the problem," she explains, "but it's your friend, Ian."
Ian, leader of the Pilvist cult, as mayor of Aquilo. Such a gentle soul and a calming presence, but Helen's wrong. I see the problem. I see it all too well. Aquilo is written by J.F. Dubow and narrated and produced by me, Amy Frost. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast platform. Want to support the show? Buy us a coffee. Go to ko-fi.com/Aquilo to donate. Aquilo has a Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Aquilo for details. Follow us on Facebook, Blue Sky, and Instagram under the username Aquilo.